The Compliance Life details the journey to and in the role of a Chief Compliance Officer. How does one come to sit in the CCO chair? What are some of the skills a CCO needs to successfully navigate the compliance waters in any company? What are some of the top challenges CCOs have faced, and how did they meet them? These questions and many others will be explored in this new podcast series. The Compliance Life is hosted by Tom Fox, and each month he'll present the story of one CCO through 4 episodes. The Compliance Life is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
In this 4-part podcast series of the Compliance Life, I visit with Ellen Hunt, the Senior Vice President, Audit, Ethics, and Compliance at AARP. Ellen is a lawyer, ethics compliance professional, and chief audit executive. She has extensive management experience in designing, implementing, and operating ethics and compliance programs, including board governance, reporting, designing ethics education, creating policy management frameworks, managing enterprise and compliance risks, as well as handling investigations and regulatory inquiries. Using AARP's Enterprise Risk Management Profile, she redesigned how AARP conducts its annual audit planning process to identify audits that relate to the organization's most significant risks and incorporated the use of data analytics into audit execution. Over these 4 podcasts, we visit about, in episode 1, her professional background and how your career can lead you to compliance. In episode 2, we look at what do you need to do to get to the role of the Chief Compliance Officer. In episode 3, we consider what do you do after you get to the CCO chair. And in episode 4, we would conclude with thoughts about moving up from the CCO chair to other corporate positions. It's a fascinating exploration of Ellen's experience in the compliance life. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back with Ellen Hunt for another episode of The Compliance Life. Ellen, in this episode, I wanted to really explore with you how does one prepare for moving into the CCO role, both working on yourself, working on your relationships, and working within and with your organization. How do you actually grow?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Tom. It's a great one. I think you have to grow in multiple ways. I think the real number one core thing is you need to understand the business. What is the business? How does it work? What are the risks associated with it? What are the key processes and procedures? That's number one. And if you don't really understand how the business works, you're not really going to be able to make the connections within the organization that you need to. Once you really understand how the business works, then you have to be a technical expert. You have to understand the rules, the regulations, and really help identify and mitigate the risks. So you've got to take that knowledge and turn it into value to your stakeholders. I think the other thing that you really need to think about is you build relationships, and you should think about building relationships at all levels of the organization. What do people need? I think there are lots of opportunities to be a silo breaker and a silo builder, in that you're building multiple silos together. And one of the things that I have done and I have found very effective is when you're thinking about your goals and your strategy, go ask other people what they want to accomplish next and figure out how can you be part of it. What can you do to help them get where they want to go? And you'll find that returns itself tenfold. And when you need something, they're going to help you too. Often, these goals are not mutually exclusive, and there's plenty of ways where you can get the kind of communication and awareness out that you need, and somebody else can also benefit from some of that marketing. And sometimes you just ask, what do you need? How can I help you? What can we do together? What kind of project can we work on together? It will help you learn the business. It will help you build the relationships, and it will help you really be much more effective. The other thing that I would just say is while you have to be an expert in ethics and compliance and you have to know the business, you need to think about expanding beyond that. Very important to be connected and part of the ethics and compliance associations, whether that's SCCE or ECI or whichever one makes sense for you. Sometimes as ethics and compliance professionals, we spend a little too much time with one another. You need to think what you know and know what is your CEO worried about? What is your CFO dealing with? How is your controller or the other folks in your finance area dealing with what they see as the risks? IT and security, you got to be familiar with that and understand what their concerns are so that when they come and talk to you, they feel that they've got somebody who understands them. You can't be an expert in everything, and I'm not suggesting that, but hang out with some different folks every once in a while and read some different materials. Sign up for a CFO newsletter, sign up for IT newsletter, dabble in something else that might be of interest to you, but maybe is not part of your swim lane or something that your department's doing. There is an excellent piece by Ron Carlucci on the Harvard Business Review, where he talks about a study that they did about what successful executives do. And he breaks this into 4 components. And I think they're terribly important. The first is breadth. You've really got to understand how all the pieces fit together. And that's really core to understanding the business. The next, he talks about context. And this is what I refer to, what do people need? Understand what they need and why. And then choice. And this is about being very focused about what you want to get done and figuring out how you may be able to achieve that while also helping others. And understanding sometimes you should say no. I think as ethics and compliance professionals, sometimes we say yes to too much, and then we get a little unfocused and scattered. And then the last one he talks about is connection. And for your relationships with your people you work with in your department and throughout the organization and colleagues within the industry are really important. And his point here is think about who do you need to get to know? Who might be key to that next promotion? Who is going to help you and sponsor you as you move forward, and be intentional and invest in making those connections. And I think those 4 categories, if you think about them and work on them repeatedly and continuously, you're going to find that you're going to get to that next level.
Could you just give the 4 categories again?
Absolutely. Breadth, which is really understanding how the pieces fit together. And that's, knowing the business. Where are the seams? Where is one department codependent on the other? And what happens when people pass the baton and it doesn't work? Context. This is understanding what people need and really getting at the heart of, well, what's important to them and why? The third one is choice. And that's about being a good decision maker. Understanding that sometimes you can't take on every single project and you can't say yes to everything, but stay focused on your goals and make good strategic decisions. And the last one is connection. And that's about being intentional and investing in important relationships.
Ellen, I've often heard the anecdote that a lunch alone by a CCO is a lunch wasted, because a CCO should be having lunch with your colleagues, with your employees, with your team members, perhaps with some of your key third parties. And one of the themes you seem to be continually getting back to is relationships and building relationships. Is that, in your mind, one of the key steps that someone moving towards a CCO role needs to develop?
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter where you are in your career, everybody needs the relationships. It's absolutely key. You're not going to get promoted if nobody knows who you are. And you're not going to get promoted if when you're not in the room and they're talking about you, the other people in the room don't know who you are. It's a great opportunity for you to let people understand what ethics and compliance is, what talents and skills you bring to the table, and how you can help the organization fulfill its strategy and meet its goals. I think when you can build those relationships, they'll serve you well forever. I think it's Christy Hart Grant who has a saying of build your network before you need it. And it's absolutely true. We live in a more and more connected world. You never know what the future might bring, and you never know who's going to tap you on the shoulder as the right next person, but they're not going to do it if they don't know who you are.
Well, Ellen, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time, but I hope our listeners will join us for our next episode where we take a look at what happens when you get in the chair and you get the CCO role. So I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Me too. Thanks, Tom.
This is Tom Fox. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of The Compliance Life. I hope you'll join me again for another episode where I visit with Ellen Hunt about her journey to the CCO chair. The Compliance Life is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network. I hope you will listen in again next week, and thank you so much for joining me this week. If there is one thing I could ask you to do, if you could rate our podcast on iTunes, it would help get the word out about this most unique podcast and the newest on the Compliance Podcast Network. Thanks again.